Hello folks, welcome to this video. So this will be a very short one. I just wanted to give a quick response to a question that I got last time in the forum regarding Python classes. So what you would notice is once you get away from the foundations and you get into the intermediate to advanced sections of Python, you come across object-oriented programming. That's where they talk about classes. And the subject matter is interesting, but my point is I just want to talk about whether or not you should use classes. And I'm not going to go into any long tutorial about using Python classes. We will tackle this later down the line as we get there, because we need to build upon them from where we have started. But it's not too difficult or matter to follow anyways. But before you think about using it, I want to remind you of keeping things very simple, because spend most of your energies solving real problems than using all the features that Python provides, or any other programming language for that matter. So just because classes have been made available doesn't mean you should use it. And my recommendation is even that if you're not sure what it is that a class is, then you shouldn't even think about using it anyway. You don't need to make your code look sophisticated. And there is the Zen of Python that talks about this thing that I'm talking about. Let me pull it up and show it to you so that you begin to apply some of these concepts as you learn to program. But this is my Python interpreter, and you can just have access to this thing that I'm talking about, the Zen of Python, by importing this. And there is a nice write-up here that is attributed to Tim Peters. It talks about a few philosophies of writing nice code. And it says beautiful is better than ugly, explicit is better than implicit, simple is better than complex. And this is the line that I wanted to highlight for you. Simple is better than complex. You do not have to use the big sounding things just because they are there. Alright, there's also flat is better than nested, sparse is better than dense, and all these things have their applications. But my emphasis is keep it simple. Okay, if the implementation is hard to explain, it is a bad idea. If the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. So these are things that you want to look out for as you begin to get into the deeper ends of things. So that's enough said about keeping things simple. And from there I want to move on to something else. Now the whole thing about Python classes is when you come across object-oriented programming in general, it talks about so many things, and some of the keywords are pulled up here. It talks about reusability, it talks about encapsulation, right? It talks about inheritance, and so many other keywords that come up. Okay, but the whole idea of using classes is to be able to, people usually when you're designing your code, you are looking forward to being able to reuse it in future. And that's the whole thing about majority of the times you're looking out for being able to reuse your code in future. Right? And there's, if you do your search, you'd find a couple of ideas about when the use of classes and a whole lot of things. But typically when programs are getting really large and you're getting so many interconnected parts, then it may be a good idea to apply some of the, should I say, disciplines or principles that object-oriented programming introduces for us. And I've explained this point already. It's connected to this. And there are times also that your program, without using classes, you might risk the chance of exposing your variables to be manipulated from places that you can't even keep track of, because your program is becoming big. But with that said, Python classes are fairly easy to use, and I'm going to pull up my coding environment and show you a few use of the Python class. Yes, so let's look at this simple example here. If all I had was this list of students, okay, just think of me. I'm writing this solution just to compute or analyze test results for some students in a class. And if all I had was this simple data of student records, okay, and each record here is just a list of grades that the student obtained in a couple of subjects, okay, and I can even provide a lot more information about this, but let's say it's this simple, okay, and all I want to do is maybe let's list a couple of things that we want to do. We want to just calculate an average for the grades that they obtained, and then what else do we want to do? Do we want to generate a grade letter, let's say, for each of the scores that they obtained. Okay, so this is something that you can very easily do just by writing either a few lines of code, or you might want to say, okay, I just want to use functions to do them, just as a way of keeping things clean. Okay, and this could be a very simple solution. So what you want to do is just pull up, write a loop that would fetch each one of these and just do a simple computation. Okay, so we could just do something like this. Maybe the first one, get the averages for each grade, right? For let's say students in, let me fetch the values. So the first thing, we want to do the average, right? So how do we go about that? Oh, sorry. How do you calculate the average? You want to just okay. So this is not even it's just a couple of grades. So let me just name the variables properly so that it makes sense. The values here would give us these grades. Okay, so for grades, it's students.values. What I want to do with it is, let's say, calculate the average like that as sum of all the grades, and then I can divide it by the number of grades that we have there, something like that, right? And then what else? So this is done. I can let me just display the average that we have, and then we print to the screen, and your solution could look more important than what I'm doing. So we can print the average to the screen just like that, and we might be done with our solution. But I mean, this doesn't look so important. Or you could separate concerns and just say, I want to use a function to do this job instead of what I've just done. Okay, so you know how we might just do that. Maybe you could just write a function that would purposely calculate this. Okay, so we could just pull this out here, maybe define a function here. Let's say let's call it average, right? It would take the grades and then compute an average for us. And so here, instead of doing what we did here, we could just reduce everything to a call to average here, and perhaps this line, okay, we can disappear it and just do this. So everything again reduces to that. So what have I done? Okay, oh sorry, I haven't used average properly, and I pass it the grades. Okay, yep, and you can see that we get the same result as we did. So if you're looking out for saying I want to reuse code, then this is making it possible for reusing code. Okay, but again, this is still a very simple example, and you could say that perhaps there's more information in this here than we've provided, because if you're looking at a typical student, they might have more information than just this. So you might want to go crazy and start using a class, right? And say, okay, perhaps this is a chance for me to use a class. And what would it look like? You want it, and it's very simple. That you use your class keyword and you say, okay, I have a student, and you go ahead. You might just put this object keyword there. Let me just could also successfully do that without using that. But there are a couple of methods that you have to now define, right? The first one being the init. It takes the self as a, and then what would be the first set of variables that you want to be created every time that you create an instance of this class. So maybe the name, all right? This is the first name, okay? A last name, and let's just have these two for a start. Okay, so we have, what did we do wrong? Okay, so you want the first name to be set to the first name parameter that is provided here. My ID is messing me up. I don't know what's wrong with it. Okay, so and then we have, let's say, last name also set to that one, and we should be good. So we've taken care of, when we create an instance of a student, we know that at least we can identify a student by these two. And then what are we gonna do? Okay, so we also want to maybe register the student and say that, okay, a student has a couple of other properties that you want to add. So do you want to initialize it here? Again, all this is going to be affected by the design that you have, but what are you going to be able to do with the student once you've created it? What can a student do? What properties that you want to keep track of? And we've set a few properties here, but also we want to think about functions that we can bundle together inside of the student object that we've created. Okay, so what might a student be able to do? Okay, should maybe a student take an exam? And if that's a function that you want to include, then you can add a few more functions. Maybe they take an exam. Or let's say register for an exam, right? And then that would be the name of the exam. We don't know yet what details should go here, so I'm just going to leave it like this. But you can already see one of the things that makes it easy and useful when you want to use classes. Now again, because my example is not very concrete, it doesn't really show you the power of what classes might be. But let's just say we jumped out of the classroom scenario here because it's very simple, and we went to another situation where, for example, we walked into a hospital. There are so many people, all right, that are coming, say, walking into the outpatient department, and when a person shows up, there's a couple of information that you want to collect on them, and not only are there patients. So if you want to look at another scenario here too, scenario 2, you walk into an OPD, there are so many people, right? If you think about them, there are the patients, there are the doctors, there are the nurses, and all these people have different set of informations on them. There are different sets of actions that they could take. So you might want to find a way to keep information on all of them. And if you wanted to just go your usual way, maybe you could say, okay, let me track the patients that come in and do something like, okay, I need to remember the name of the patient. What about patient name? And do something like that. And you want to do patient age and do something like that. Okay, so let me just initialize it to something like that, and you can already see the pattern of so many things concerning the patient that we could track like that. Okay, then you might want to come and do the same thing for a doctor too, right? Let's even start from, these are the two people that are most important here. Okay, so you want to do the same for a doctor's name, maybe the doctor's should I say specialization or specialty, right? We need to at least know that maybe the room that they are currently assigned. So let me say doctor's assigned room, and things like that, and the list continues. You could keep a long list of variables that will keep track of all the people that you have in the hospital, and you can see already you have a tall list. Okay, at some point of your program, you might want to say that, okay, I want to keep track of the doctor wherever they've been assigned, whichever room that they are in, and what that means is that you would have to find a way, maybe say assign. There's a point that you would want to assign a room to a doctor, right? Okay, so you need a doctor's name, and then you need also to indicate the room that they are going to be assigned. Okay, and you can have a list of all these other things that you can do on a doctor. You can do the same thing for your patients, and have functions that would perfectly do everything that you want it to do. Or you might go the class way and say that, okay, this list is going to go on, and this is where the need to break down your code. Okay, so already I've created for you the scenario where your program is getting a bit sophisticated with several moving parts, and you can see all these are people. Perhaps they share a common feature, a set of features that you think that you might want to be able to bundle them together. And again, the details of the implementation would or the scenario, your solution would determine how you actually implement it. So you might just think of, okay, why not create a person class, right, that has a few properties common to all these people that I have already mentioned, and then I can use that as a template. There's always going to be a name, at least at the foundation, right? So I'll create they will have a full name. Okay, so there will be a first name and then a last name. So why don't I create a person class that would help me to get a template that I can use to represent all these different players that we have in the hospital. And you can go ahead and create your person class. So this would be a generic person, okay, that has at least a name, but because there is varying information that you collect on each kind of person, you might then come and create a child class of this person. Okay, so a patient is a person, okay, but you're using the person class as a template for creating this person. Okay, so this is again another concept in object-oriented programming that allows you to inherit, okay, basically extend the features of I want to use the template that you've already created. So this is a scenario in which you might want to entertain the use of classes. Okay, so it helps you to not only group data and functionality, but you also get the added advantage of writing code that nicely breaks your need or your use case into different functional areas and separates concerns nicely. Okay, so if you already can identify with the scenario that I've created here, then classes may be a way to go, and it's this simple in creating classes. But of course, there's a lot more that you can do, and defining properties and methods would still be very similar to the things you already know about, creating variables, creating functions and things like that. So with this explanation, I just wanted to whet your appetite for using or not using Python classes. But in this particular case, I think it makes sense to take your time and separate concerns like this. So folks, I'm just going to leave it here. As you can see, it's not my intention to go very deeply into this, but this was just a quick response to the question, and later on down the tutorial I want to spend a little more time and prepare to do a deeper presentation on this matter. I hope that this helps you. We'll talk again soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.